Hello, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, we are sending you greetings from UNITAR, IFES, and GEDC. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the fourth session today in the international conference, a virtual conference, International Conference on Women in STEM in the Time of Pandemic. This conference is hosted by UNITAR, IFES, and GEDC. I'm Soma Chakrabarti. I'm the first vice president of IFES, which is International Federation of Engineering Education Societies, and I work for ANSYS, the global leader in engineering simulation. I am your moderator for this session, and in fact, I'm the moderator for all 6 sessions. As I said, this is the 4th session. The first session was an opening ceremony, and then we had 2 regional sessions. The first one focusing on Asia and Pacific, Asia, Australia, India, everything was included there. The second session focused on both North and South Americas, so the Americas and the entire Europe. Now this session, we are focusing on Middle East and North Africa, and we have distinguished panel of people, and I will be introducing to them shortly. Before that, a few housekeeping things that these sessions, as I said, are one after another, and there, in between each of the sessions, there are breaks. So in between the last session and this session, there was a half-an-hour break, and it will be followed later also. So we'll break between the sessions. When you submit a question, and please do submit a question, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Please write your questions in the question answer box on your screen. You will find on your right hand side possibly there is a little panel sort of a thing where you write your question and answer, and we will answer those. And if you have any other comments or any problem in connection, please do also write there. Our IT person will take care of those. So with that, I think I'm going to give it to Michael Adalla, but here is a little bit introduction. Michael is representing UNITAR, the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. He's based in Geneva, and he's the deputy for the division or portfolio manager for finance, trade, and anti-corruption in the Division of Prosperity. He manages the design, development, and implementation of training activities and supports partnership development related to trade and finance programs of UNITAR. Michael, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Soma. Welcome once again. For those of you who have been following the webinar, welcome back. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, good afternoon from where am I sitting. Maybe it's evening on your side or morning. We'd like to welcome you to the Women in STEM in time of the pandemic, a virtual conference organized by UNITA, IFES, and GEDC. Our next panel session zooms in on the Middle East and North Africa and the issues faced by women working in STEM in the region. UNITAR places a special focus on the region in terms of our programs, which are geared toward nurturing entrepreneurs and change makers in diverse fields, including the STEM areas. This includes an emphasis on building the capacities of women to engage and work in areas of digital literacy, coding, and cybersecurity. Our focus for this part of the conference is how women working in the region are coping with the specific challenges brought about by the pandemic. On behalf of UNITAR, I would like to thank our distinguished panel members who have all come together to share with us their thoughts and their insights. Also, I would like to thank IFIS and GDC for co-organizing this conference, especially Dr. Hans Hoyer, who is had pragmatic leadership to be able to co-organize and being able to design and discuss this possibility for us to be able to launch this first conference with GDC and IFIS. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor back to Soma. Soma, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for such a wonderful introduction to this session and giving us the perspective why we are here. So we have four very distinguished women engineering leaders from Middle East and North Africa. And we have Dr. Alaa Ashmawy from IFIS. He's the president of IFIS, to give a man's perspective in this pandemic when we have seen women have encountered more disparity as well as dislocation from work if we compare with men. It's no secret. They had to take more work on their shoulders working from home, especially women in STEM who have been in leaders or otherwise, I mean, working at the universities or so. So we want to know from each region, we want to know what was there, how was the situation, and what we are looking from this particular session is that knowing what has happened in Middle East and North Africa in terms of women's responsibilities or women's situation during this pandemic, but not just only women, but women in STEM, because they have additional responsibility at work and at home. Just being in the STEM, it's a lot of work for them to be in the workforce continuously. So our first speaker, before I go to the first speaker, I'll just name the speakers, but I'll give their introductions later on. My dear friend, Tagwa Musa, whose writing inspired us to get this book in shape, is here. Tagwa Musa. We have Reem Sabouni. Good to see you. We have Masoumeh Nasiri-Kenari. This is the first time I'm meeting you. And we have Aseel Nimah. This is the first time I'm meeting you actually in person, but two of these people, of course, I know for quite some time, and especially Tagwa. And Alaa, good to see you again in the same day. I'll start with Masoumeh Nasiri-Kenari, and let me introduce her. Dr. Masoumeh Nasiri-Kenari is a professor of electrical engineering at Sharif University of Technology in Tehran, Iran. She received her bachelor's and master's from Isfahan University of Technology, Iran, and her PhD from the University of Utah in United States in 1994. In 2001, she founded the Wireless Research Laboratory in the Electrical Engineering Department at her university to coordinate wireless communications research. And we are so very honored to have you, Masoumeh. Tell us about, I hope she has been unmuted now, and just want to make sure. I think we need to you need to unmute yourself, Masoumeh. Yeah. The question that we have for you is give us a little perspective on the women in STEM during the pandemic in Iran and in general in the Middle East, what you are seeing, and whether they had to take more work on their shoulders, or they received quite a bit of help? How their work life changed, how their home life changed?
Okay, thank you very much. Soma, it is my pleasure to meet you and also attending in this webinar on such a nice subject which affects all of us, in general, in particular to women in STEM, in developing country. It is great. Yes, COVID-19 affects all of us, and in some way, for some more, for some less. And for people of my country in Iran, it was, I think, much worse, because especially for women in STEM, because of the sanction we are in. Right now, I am using VPN to have connection in this, to have participation in this webinar. So COVID-19, I am a professor. I do academic work, research, administrative, also some volunteer work in STEM. I am involved in 3 women in STEM network. The information I am giving today are based on my own experience, and also the information I collected from my colleague, my friend, my student, and member of women in STEM network that I am a member of this network. You see, COVID-19, you see at the beginning of the first announcement of COVID death case, the university has been locked down, shut down, all university, all school, and everything, kindergarten, and so on. So the most challenge that women encounter, like other country, developing country, was responsibility care, and it reduced the efficient work. For instance, for myself, I had to do all of the work, housework, like cleaning, food preparation, and I didn't have any help. My husband was a doctor, is a doctor in medicine, and he had to visit his patient in the afternoon. Also in the morning, he's a professor in university, and in the morning he had a virtual class and also webinar, but he didn't have inadequate knowledge about IT and using the app to attend virtual meeting and virtual class. I was the one who was always available to help him. The app actually he used was different from the app I was using, my university was using, so it took a lot of time for me to learn about the app and be available whenever he had the lecture. In case he found some problem, I had to fix it. So and also all wasn't ideal with that, the way I am explaining now. All was not too bad. As a professor, I was to attend a different meeting in the lab level, in the university level, in the outside university, and also I had to attend in different thesis defense session inside Tehran, the city I am living, and also I saw outside Tehran, so I had always travel, but attending in virtually in the meeting saved a lot of time spent in the transportation in a city, big city like Tehran. It takes more than sometimes 5 hours, more than 1 hour round trip travel from home or school to the meeting place. So virtual meeting helped us to save the time spent in the traveling, and we could use that to arrange some household work like intellectual work like cleaning, preparing the food, and so on. While at the same time, I was attending in the meeting, thanks to poor connection of internet. I didn't have to turn on the video, so I could do my intellectual work at the same time that I was attending in the meeting. I deal with this problem, balancing the work and intensive responsibility I encountered this way. The other problem was poor. The university wasn't ready. Poor provision of university in providing virtual meeting. In the beginning, we didn't have access to the appropriate app to have our virtual class. So I used Skype and social network to have my lecture and also attend different meeting with my student and group meeting and so on. Then the university eventually established our IT scientists and our computer scientists could provide an app for virtual meetings. So this problem has been a little solved. The other problem is very poor connection we had, very poor connection. In the middle of my lecture, I had disconnected several times. So delay between what I was writing and my voice was very much, and a student had problem. To solve this problem, I use parallel connection. I use my cell phone data and also Wi-Fi at the same time. In case one went out, I use another one in substitute. The other problem was eye-to-eye connection with my student. You know, as a professor, with eye-to-eye connection, I get a lot of information from my student. Where should I slow down? Where should I give more explanation? So to deal with this problem, I changed my classic lecturing. I give my lecture note to a student in advance, and they had to read it before attending the virtual class. And then during the virtual class, I review the material and then spend the most of the time asking the question and answer and problem solving. So I had a lot of interaction with my student by using this approach. And the other problem we did was that our student didn't have access to adequate device, computer or electronic pen, because of the sanction, and these devices were very, very, very expensive in the market. And this is another difficulty we had. They are the challenges I made regarding the lecturing, but for the research we had a lot of problem, because our graduate student had to leave dormitory and go back to their home, and the dormitory wasn't prepared at the beginning to according to COVID-19 protocol. So it takes a lot of time for some of the students back to the dormitory. In this period, I had very poor connection with our students. Some of them had experimental work and wasn't able to do the experimental work. It affected their publication, their productivity, because they didn't have in-person connection with their professor as us, and we couldn't guide them. I had to spend a lot of time talking on phone with them, or on Skype one by one. And also our student, even though I had a meeting through Skype with my group, my research group, they lost the brainstorm and discussion they always had after each group because of they didn't they hasn't been in lab, and they were far from each other, and the internet connection wasn't good as well. So it also affected our administrative work and also our collaboration. You see, I had some experimental work initiated 1 year ago, but because of the COVID-19, it didn't progress at all. So I am talking about the challenges and difficulty we encounter, but we learned a lot through this crisis. We learned how cyberspace can affect our life, and our the university, the industry learned felt that they have to invest in the infrastructure for online learning and cyberspace, and we learned how to manage the crisis. You see, in Tehran, we always have pollution, intensive pollution in the winter time, and the lecture had to be the lecture had to be disconnected. We didn't have lecture because the school has been closed due to pollution. Now we learned we can have virtual lecture in this period. So I have a lot to say about the COVID-19 and their effect, but I don't want to take too much of your time. As I remember, I had just 5 minutes. I hope I didn't talk too much.
Well,
leave the rest for question and answer.
Yeah, and yes, and some of the questions actually you already have answered, the questions that we kept for you, so no worries. I just want to mention that Masoumeh actually dedicated her conversation here in the memory of her mom, right, Masoumeh? For her integrity, honesty, kindness, and forgiveness were the big parts of the lovely character her mother had. And
yes. My mom passed away about a few weeks ago, and
that's very hard.
sorry, I don't have some concentration because I had been in too much tension in last 2-3 weeks.
We can all understand, and having gone through this myself, I know what you are going through, and I mean, one day it will be all over and you will start remembering your mother fondly. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Sharing your thoughts, and I will have some questions for you as you were telling your stories, that what you felt. So let's go to the next speaker whom we have. We have here, oh, my dear friend, Tagwa. Tagwa, it's you, but let me introduce you. What an honor. Tagwa is an associate professor of petroleum engineering at Sudan University of Science and Technology. Sudan, she's there, as well as she's a college member at United Kingdom Research and Innovation, UKRI, International Development Peer Review College. She's the first woman in Sudan to receive a PhD in petroleum engineering field, and those who have read her memoir and her experience as a petroleum engineer, experience as a dean, know that what all she had to go through and what all her colleagues as well as students have to go through being a woman petroleum engineer. What I would like to know on behalf of the audience, of course, is that what are the challenges women in STEM, your engineering field and other engineering fields that you saw, and science and other technology fields, math field, that you saw during this pandemic? What challenges were they facing? Please tell us.
Okay, thank you so much, Soma. Very nice really to talk to you. Every time I see you, I feel very happy, you know.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, of course, pandemic lockdown has two sides of the coin, and it really has so many difficulties, but also there are so many, maybe I can say, advantages or positive way. Since we are talking about the working mother woman life during pandemic lockdown, we need to include the impact of COVID-19 on her family and her work, of course. One of the main positive sides related to family, pandemic was a good chance for many of us to spend more time with family, have more time to be very close to our children, have a fun time with them, know their details. And also we have time to rearrange our houses really and spend more time in the kitchen. But the other side of the coin here is all the family members expect more from the mother, even in times of stress. They almost wait for her to perform all the household tasks. She has no way to drop some of her responsibilities in our gender bias. And sorry, Alaa, our gender bias world. This may not be the case in the West, but really it is the case in here, in our countries. Woman, she can do anything, and the mother, they need her to do everything. They look to her, she is in a holiday during this pandemic, and we are at home, so they think we are in a holiday, where the time for work should not be there. We cannot work, we should not work, we cannot open a laptop. And I think this is a little bit difficult for every working woman. So if you ask yourself how I deal with this, well, simply really, I learned to say no. And this is not easy, really. I learned it after so many hours, very long time. At last, I decided to say no, I cannot cook this. When they bake some kind of a cake or something to cook in the kitchen, I said, no, this is not the time for kitchen. I'm going to work. And just go and open my laptop. The other positive points are the chances for online learning through training courses, webinars, lectures, and improvement of information and communication technology skills. We really improved our skills in computer sciences. But this also has a downside. It is included instability of the internet, and there is lack of power sometimes. Also I think it presents some pressure on the too many virtual meetings. There are so many meetings every day, 3, 4, 5 meetings, sometimes at the same time. So also for me personally, and I'm really also, I asked my colleagues here in Sudan and some of my colleagues from Africa, because I have so many network with our African engineering women leaders who are writing their their journey in Rising to the Top Volume 4. As you know, we are working in this book now. So I increased my budget for the internet, and this is not easy, but I did that, and I tried always to keep my laptop full with electricity in case just. And sometimes I used to apologize from some meeting when it is impossible to attend. But there are so many downsides related to work as well. As Soma introduced me, I'm Associate Professor of Petroleum Engineering in Sudan. And as is well known for all of us and all the audience, the 3 major pillars of academic evaluation are teaching, service, and research. During pandemic lockdown, teaching, all the university system faced transition to remote teaching and learning, and the loss of access to research resources also is there. Online teaching is more time consuming, and there are some university on maybe all of you just related to universities, so you know really online teaching is time consuming, especially when you have large classes. There is lack of electronic learning infrastructure and lack of power are represented in this high pressure and stress on both instructors and students. More contact hours with students are needed since the culture is not there. The culture of online learning is not there. And most of students just need individual follow-up to be sure they succeed to download the lectures and submit their assignment. So Iran is not alone most of the countries here has the same problem. However, pandemic opened many online volunteer opportunities to serve the community. There are so many programs we engage ourselves just to fight coronavirus to our communities. And they are during pandemic also, we started with my colleagues from IFES and GEDC to prepare the fourth volume of Rising to the Top, which is focusing in Africa. It is on pipeline now. But the main challenges were setbacks in research. And just also my friend and my colleagues, all of them are talking about research problem. Yeah, we have no way to finish our research from home. And also the main other problem is finding ways to make best use of time. So really, pandemic is not easy time for us, but we always just try to be here and to be a part of the world. So I'm looking forward to answer all your questions later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tagwa. I will be coming back to you on the research question that how did you manage to do something, if at all you did, but not now, after we finish talking to Reem, Aseel, and Alaa. I'm now going to ask Aseel, Nimah, and very nice meeting you for the first time, Aseel. Let me read your little bio here. Iraqi, she's from Iraq. Oh, there she is, Aseel. Hi, Aseel is from Iraq. Of course, a very young Iraqi woman, and she practices dentistry, general practitioner dentist, and auditor in the performance evaluation department at Iraqi Ministry of Health. And she has been engaged in community building activities since the age of 16 through her participation in the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program as part of being member of the Baha'i community in Iraq. Tell me, how was it in Iraq, and overall, what you have seen the women in STEM? You are a dentist, so you are directly connected with the people whom you take care of. I mean, I couldn't go to my dentist during this pandemic. I mean, it's so. Certainly, there have been challenges, and if you have faced any challenges at home, and how did you overcome those?
Thank you. First of all, happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Same to you.
Of course, COVID-19 and in 2020 has been very difficult to many of us. I'll start speaking about my job as an auditor in the Iraqi Ministry of Health. So what basically we do, we go to audit and evaluate different health institutions. We had this plan for 2020, and suddenly there is the COVID. The COVID came to Iraq. We had to be flexible. We changed our plan. Now we have to go to search all the health institutions and evaluate, are they prepared for this pandemic? And things had been collapsing really rapidly because, as you know, many health institutions had to knee before COVID-19. So, but basically what we did is that we had our weekly visit to different health institutions to evaluate their population. It has been very difficult for women who work in health in hospitals and health center, because imagine during summer or winter putting all these layer of preventive measures and rushing down to help the patients. Then they have to go back to their homes to care for their elder mother or father or for their children. It has been really difficult. I only go for hospitals and health center for a couple of hours each day. But imagine women that spent hours and hours daily. They have been exposed to heavy doses of the virus. We've lost many of them, many of the women, doctors and nurses that work there. So it hasn't been difficult. And as the other panelists have been mentioned, back home, women still have the same responsibilities. Education hasn't been really easy in Iraq because schools has shifted to online education, and we're not used to online education. we have a bad connection in Iraq. Not all the families have smart cell phones or good connection or electricity. So imagine young women that go to hospitals or health center in the morning to care for the patient. Then when they go back home, they have to sit down with their children to teach them how to write, because online education hasn't been really effective in Iraq till now. So things has been a little difficult, but I think women are strong. They are keeping up, and step by step we're learning how to cope with COVID-19.
Thank you so much. In a short span, you said what the women in Iraq had faced and are still facing during this pandemic. And Iraq is not alone. I think it's all over.
Yes.
It's all over. I mean, I have, of course, relatives all over the world, but my friends and my family are mostly in India. They have faced the same thing, especially the doctors and nurses. They have faced, and sometimes they were away for few days because they couldn't come back from hospitals
Yes.
home and go back. And then when they came back after changing and probably didn't even take rest, they had to take care of their young children
Yes.
and
Just last
elderly
week,
parents. Yeah.
sorry. Just last week, I had to go for a short trip to Hilla City, Babylon City, to evaluate all the health institution there. When I came back to my house, I had to isolate myself for like 5 days to make sure that I didn't get the virus.
Yeah.
Now, one of my colleagues and the Iraqi Ministry of Health is COVID positive with her husband, and now we're caring for her young children. They are really young. They're staying with their mother and father, but in separate room. So each day, one of us will go and prepare food for them. And when a mother gets sick, the house really crashes like. And
Yeah.
yeah, especially when the mother is a doctor. Doctor working hour are different. It's not like
Yeah.
they are a regular employee. And since the pandemic, the many doctors have been working like 24 hours on 7, because they not only care for patient in the hospital. Patient can call them. Many doctors, especially women, have volunteers, and they put their phone numbers online for any patients who are sick and isolated in homes, not in hospital, because many hospitals has been full bed throughout the pandemic. So patients who are stable and suddenly there has been a change in their condition, they can call. We have many Facebook pages. Most of the volunteers are doctors who are women and also men. They have volunteers to give free advices for patients. They give you once you text them, once you write to the Facebook page, they will reply to you immediately. I experienced that with my family. I used one of the pages because we all had COVID positive at the same time. So we were connected to one doctor, and she was really nice to us. She used to ask about us regularly and keep us updated and ask about lab tested. How are we eating? How is our temperature? Our oxygen saturation? So imagine that women are doing all of this and also caring about their children. And the problem of online education has been really huge. I have many friends who have like kids are in preschool or still in primary school. Kids at such ages need a lot of care, because this is when they learn the ABC. This is when they're learning the 101 math. And now they're learning all of this via a monitor, something that is virtual, which is really difficult. So my friends spend a lot of time with their children. Now they are tutoring the children, not the teachers. The teachers are doing a lot of work because it's like complicated. My mother is a professor at university, and it's really complicated to connect with the student with a webcam, and sometimes you can't open your webcam because the connection is really bad. So but I think we're being flexible in Iraq. I think We definitely had our ups and downs, but we learned a lot. For me myself, I learned a lot. At least I learned to cook something, to bake some new dishes, and participate in many online courses. And one thing that COVID learned me that uh, time management. Despite sometimes I had to stay at home, uh, if, especially when I was COVID positive, when I had to stay at home for isolation, I learned a lot of time management, how to manage my. It's not only about resting or sleeping. When do I? What books do I need to read? Which courses did I participate in? Things that I've learned, games that I played with my little sister. All of this.
Thank you so much. I mean, what a wonderful way to look at the positive sides also. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and
You're
experience.
welcome.
And we'll have again some questions for you, but let's talk to Reem now. And Reem and I met during another webinar related to the second volume of Rising to the Top. So since then, we have been connected. Reem is, Reem Sabouni is Associate Professor at the ABET accredited Abu Dhabi University, or ADU. And she has authored several publications in the fields of geotechnical and structural engineering. She's also the coordinator of student enrollment and success for the College of Engineering at the Abu Dhabi University. So, Reem, tell us your experience at I mean, what you see in your country and overall in the Middle East as a women's experience during our challenges they're facing during the COVID-19, especially the women in engineering, women in science, women in other technological fields. Tell us about it.
Thank you very much for, first of all, for the nice introduction and for having me again in such a wonderful event, and happy Women's Day for everyone, even though a lot of people have been mentioning that. I would like to just share some of my thoughts regarding the experience that, like from my experience with the pandemic. But the first thing that usually that will come to my mind when I think about the beginning of the pandemic is that the first lockdown and the restriction of activities in the UAE was around this time, a year ago. And that was a week before the third round of a forum that I was organizing and chairing, and I had been working for about a year for all of the aspects, and that was the Women Engineering Forum 2020 that we had. It was one of the first in the UAE and in that aspect. So everything was ready, and the strategic partnership with the Abu Dhabi municipality, the support of several international societies, ACI, FIB, IEEE, ASCE, all of those, and the support of the industry. And we had a lot of international speakers that were flying in, and we had national speakers, and then the COVID lockdown became effective and a week shy from the event. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. My first thought was that all this effort got to waste, and I'll come back to this later on. At this time, the Ministry of Education had decided to shift the mid-year break, in which I think it's a very clever thing that they did, for schools for 2 weeks earlier. And the university followed that. And the aim of this shift was to allow the faculty members and teachers to have enough time to get trained on remote and online learning techniques, to be ready for the shifting all the education, schooling, and higher education to online learning after that break. So during that break, it was a break for the students, but it was an extensive 2 weeks, and that it was very hard, but it was very productive. So we had to get ourselves trained on. So a lot of people, whoever knew something on this technology, stood up and began training the rest of the group. And so we had ourselves trained on the new online platforms. For us in the university and a lot of places in the UAE, we use the Microsoft Teams. And we had new features on the Blackboard, the lecture recording techniques in case we could to overcome the internet problems, and so on. So we came out of these 2-week periods with enough knowledge on how to use the technology, but the challenging part was on how to best utilize these in teaching STEAM courses remotely. As a lot of my friends has already mentioned, teaching, and I'm teaching in civil engineering, And it is usually courses that involve extensive problem solving, and it requires interaction and so on. So it took some practice and experimenting with different techniques to reach to a strategy that got students involved and engaged in the engineering problem solving. And always we are working on this and trying to improve in this regards. The main challenge related to the higher education also in STEAM area was running laboratories and conducting experiments and so on. So that was very challenging, but fortunately now they allowed, beginning from last semester, they allowed the universities just for the labs to come back, for the students to come back with major restrictions, but to attend the labs physical. So that was overcome, as well as beginning from this semester, they will allow universities hopefully to conduct the final exams also face-to-face. So the higher education sector is in the UAE running remotely since that time till now. The schools on and off and depending on the grades and so on. After getting comfortable with the face-to-face, with all of these restrictions and using the online virtual techniques and so on, and several activities going online, I thought, or I decided of pursuing the effort of the Women Engineering Forum 2020 that I stopped at the beginning and I mentioned. And I went back and spoke with the parties that were involved, the municipality, the societies, and all of those, and everyone was in favor of having that. And it ended up, so we had everyone on board. We did a lot of training sessions to make sure that all of the technical problems were solved. And on the 19th and 20th of November, we had a very successful event where it was the best of the three rounds. This was the third round. It was the best of the three rounds because we were able, using the virtual platform, to open it to worldwide. So we had over 500 national and international people or attendees that came in and attended various parts of the conference. So this is one part. Now, talking about challenges in the work is something, and combining that with the social challenges that everyone was speaking about earlier, or in different aspects, that is a different perspective. For my case, I had my 15-year-old son was also trying to adapt to the online learning. My parents-in-law were stuck here in the UAE because they were with us for a visit, and due to the ban of traveling, they couldn't leave. And my husband also is a professor, so he was. So, and sometimes we used to have. Good for us that we had a lot of rooms at our home and several laptops, and the internet connection was good, because at certain times my son was taking online classes. I was giving online classes. My husband was giving online classes, and my parents-in-law were stuck at home because of the restrictions. They're above 70 and they were not allowed to enter to most places here in the UAE for their safety, and due to that. So on top of all of these social aspects, the number of house chores that increased due to everyone being at home and not being able to utilize to get helpers and to help in some of the chores that we usually had helpers with. So this period required a lot of patience and a great deal of management and cooperation from everyone within the household. So we had a lot of help from my husband, and everyone was on board with this. I think I'm even better that my situation is easier than people that had more children or younger children and so on. And the last point I wanted to mention, which is related to STEAM, and also my friends also already mentioned it, is the research. The main thing that was affected, they were able to manage to get online teaching and so on. But for the research, it was affected for the pandemic, as we are restricted to go into the university. A lot of restrictions are there. We cannot be, there's a quota for people being on campus. Suppliers of equipments, and for my case, I have a good part of my research is experimental research. So a lot of suppliers couldn't supply materials, and even graduate students that were working and had non-experimental objectives were struggling because of all of these family issues and work issues and so on. So when I look back at the overall experience during this pandemic till now, I see that a lot of challenges were there, but I believe that each of these challenges came up with a certain gain. So hopefully we can look at the gain that we get up from all of this at the end. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion later on.
Thank you so much, Reem. I love the way you positively ended. I'm sure it has been, I mean, everyone in the home, at home is doing something or other on the internet. Yes, it does happen. I know that too. So thank you so much. But now it's my question is for Alaa. Alaa, you heard from these fabulous women engineering leaders and women scientists, women dentists. And you heard about nurses and doctors all together. That what they have gone through. How would you reflect on that from a man's point of view?
Well, let me start first by thanking all the panelists. I mean, these are real stories that are coming from real colleagues from the MENA region here. And to follow up on your question, Soma, let me start by saying one of the things that I appreciated most during the pandemic here, on a personal note, is that the pandemic gave me the opportunity to spend more time with my teenage daughters and to assist them in their STEM studies. Now, this is something positive that we couldn't think about coming out of the pandemic, but the positive impact is evident in their performance in school. And the reason I'm saying this is that had it not been for the pandemic, I wouldn't be spending a lot of time at home. And even though it's from my perspective, it's something that I'm not used to, it did allow me to bond better with the family and to spend more time on things that matter. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, I think it's very important to understand that the immediate family and specifically men's support during the pandemic is critical. Mm-hmm. And this is something that's not so easy in the MENA region here. You have to remember there's a whole broad range of levels of education in the region here. You have a lot of people who are well educated, but you have a lot of people who are also less educated. And with these, you get stereotypes that thrive where, you know, it's more important for the boy to, receive or continue the education more than the girl, for example. So if there are competing interests, like some of what we heard about multiple people wanting to be online at the same time at home, the priority is given to the boys. Now, these are these are things that need to be addressed, and these are things that on the negative side have impacted the community that we have to think about. We have to think about the less privileged people who do not have access to internet at all, or have very limited access to internet, very slow connections, and just cannot go through either work from home or have their kids even attend or be educated virtually online. So all of these are challenges that I think have impacted girls and women more than men. As I said, the role of men is critical, and on the positive side, we see some positive trends in terms of changing socioeconomic traditions and so on. We see men being more understanding of their role in terms of assisting the family at home. We've seen also extended family support, and maybe that's something in the region here that we're privileged to have. So in many cases, you have the uncles and the aunts and the grandparents and so on living nearby. I'm not saying that this is everywhere, but it exists within certain communities. And to make use of this during the pandemic to support the families is something that, again, I don't think we spoke enough about, and we could tap into this. And the community as a whole has a responsibility in ensuring that all these issues that affect gender bias and that affect the disadvantage that our colleagues, women in STEM have in the region here need to be addressed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not muted. Thank you so much. thank you for saying it so compassionately. That's what matters most. And I think I have questions for Tagwa and everyone actually. But I think as I was listening to all your stories, and this specific session really uncovered or unveiled the very important challenges which have hit women more, but overall, one is that the online learning needs to have, if there is online learning or any online connection, needs to have good network. And if that is not available, then it's very difficult. That's one thing. Second thing is that the people who work in the healthcare sector, for them to handle everything at home in the same way that they used to do, it's very difficult during these days. We have to think of them. And the women who teach, or even the men who teach, and their research is there. And that will be my next question for Tagwa. But they're conducting experimental research. How can we think differently if such things happen again? So many of the challenges that were sort of hidden, we had never thought of those, and they are being unveiled at this time all of a sudden. And some we are able to overcome, and some we will find ways to overcome. So with that, I have a question for Tagwa. It's related to research. You, Reem, Masoumeh, all you talked about the research. How has your research affected, and how have you seen your other colleagues in the department or in the College of Engineering, how their research has been affected, especially those like Reem was saying, do experimental research during the pandemic time, and especially this is for the women researchers.
Okay, thank you so much for this very important question. Really, pandemic, one of the most affected by pandemic is research. But really the problem is for the research that needs some experiment in the laboratory and laboratory equipments, and need you go to the university. This you cannot do it during pandemic because it is too difficult to go. There is no way. And most of research teams have some undergraduate and postgraduate students, and they are not there. So this kind of research, I think it is totally suspended during pandemic. But the other way is pandemic is open chances for simulation. So most of the researchers just shifted to use simulators to have some papers, to have to finish some researches. Also, it was chance for writing books, I think. Also, for me, really, I finished a book in petroleum engineering. It is a book about cyclic steam stimulation to enhance heavy oil recovery. It talk about challenges and lessons learned from this method. It is a technical book in petroleum engineering. Fortunately, it has been published in October 2020. Also, I found it is as a chance to finish some suspended work. I have some experiments before, but I didn't finish my papers. And during this pandemic lockdown, I really finished most of my papers. So I think just shift to find other ways is the solution, because there is no way for any experiments at that time. Now in Sudan, we already started to go to the university and we can use some equipments, but with so many limitations also.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tagwa. Masoumeh, how was your experience as for the research? You have to unmute. You have to unmute. Yep, yep, yeah. You. Oops.
Okay, now you hear me.
Yes.
Okay, you see, only experimental work has not been affected by COVID-19, but theoretical base has been affected too, because the student didn't have adequate computer. They went out to their city, hometown. They didn't have adequate internet, poor internet connection, not good computer. So for theoretical based research, we had problem too, in addition to experimental work, and the student didn't have good connection with their professor. So we couldn't good guide them, supervise them. We used to have every week meeting in present. In present, you have a lot of discussion in present, but in the virtual meeting, you have to have good connection in order to good supervise your student. My problem was some of my graduate students, PhD students, were from remote city without good access to internet. So I couldn't good guide them. They didn't have good computer to do the theoretical analysis. So they have been less productive. Also, the student had a lot of issue in their family, especially women in the small city. I heard from my colleague in another university that women who left the dormitory and back to their hometown, some of them, because of the problem that their family had, because the family couldn't cover the cost of the living, and they didn't have financial aid, so they quit their education, they quit their program, and had to get married. I heard from some of my colleagues, they had this problem regarding it to their PhD student. My PhD student, 2-3 of them had problem, but after the university prepared the dormitory according to the COVID restriction, those came back to the dormitory. Now they have better connection, internet connection, and they can handle the research better than before. We learned a lot during this crisis. We learned a lot, and we adjust ourselves to the situation. Now it is getting much better. Our online learning is improved. Our scientists are working on the infrastructure to have good connection. You see, all the analytical research back to have good connection between professor and a student. If you can make this connection, everything will go very well. I don't know. I could transfer what I meant. Could you? Do you have my voice?
Yes. Yes.
So the big problem for us, the big problem is connection, internet connection. Poor connection affected our research, affected our lecturing, affected our volunteer work and everything.
Yeah. Okay, I thank you so much. I have a question for Aseel. It says, it came through the question answer box. It says, as a woman in your field, have you faced different treatment of understanding from male colleagues than male colleagues? I mean, different. I think what the question is that have you ever faced different treatment just because you're a woman, and the men faced another treatment?
Yes, definitely. I think how to understand that women are equal to men. It's a culture that is evolving in Iraq. I remember back when I was a student, just as my second year in dentistry college, a professor told us that dentistry is a hard job for women. If you're a girl, you shouldn't get into dentistry. And I was shocked by that because I started to like this field, And then I was surprised to know that his wife was actually a surgeon, a dental surgeon.
Wow.
Yeah, and I couldn't understand. Now it's different. Now, and with my colleagues, whether it's in the clinic or in my daily work in the Ministry of Health, yeah, there are some different way of treatment, but mostly because I think in the Mediterranean region, where men are very protective of women. You know what I say? So they usually I can drive my car. I can drive my car to go to the to work, or I can do many things by my own. I have my family raised me to be independent, to do things of my own. But being surrounded by a lot of men feel that they have to protect the woman. They have to do work for her, as you mean. For example, if I have some paperwork to be done between different departments in the ministry, suddenly one of my colleagues said, no, you're a woman, I will go through that. Or if I have to arrange some phone calls to make sure that we have the vehicles are ready for our team to travel from one city to another, another man step up and said, no, let me handle it, this is a guy work. So it's not that I feel offended by it. I feel offended because I think that they think that women can do this because she's a woman. This is a guy's work, this is a man work. But I think they are meaning good by this. They just
Yeah.
want to be protective, and
Yeah.
that's it. I'm not sure. Should we change that? I think, yeah, we need to change that, because we need to understand that an institution, family is the basic unit of a human community, need to be run down by men and women. It's like it's like a bird. A bird need two wings. So one wing is the man and the other wing is the woman. So any institution, whether the family, whether it's a company, a private company, whether it's a department, whether it's a division in a public institution, men and women need to collaborate more.
Right.
And sometimes in our community, because of this culture of being protective, men need to protect women. Women get extra privilege, and for myself, I don't agree with that. For example, in our parliament, in our election, each 4 years we go for election for our parliament. There's like they give extra privilege for women. So even if a woman don't get the required votes to get a seat in the parliament, they give her that. It's like a quota. They call it a quota.
Yeah.
So the winning party need to give like one or two seats that were won by men to women, because this is
Yeah.
the law. You're right. And I think this extra leverage shouldn't be done. Women need to earn this. They need to earn this seat, for example. And also, for example, and sometimes it's the opposite. For example, in the Iraqi Ministry of Health, we have many departments. In
Yeah.
the Ministry of Health headquarters, we have like 7 to 8 departments. Each department specializes in something. So all of these departments are run by men. The general directors are all men, no women. Despite that,
Yeah.
most of we have many women that are really expert. They have like
Yeah.
25 years in
Yeah.
expertise. So things are being like, different from one angle to another.
I can relate to it a lot. I grew up in India, and there was like, oh no, you can't do it because you are a girl or this thing. It's not that every time they meant that oh, you are very different, you cannot do. No, they were very protective, especially my cousin brothers. I mean, cousins are brothers there. And then they I mean, I grew up with them, but they were overly protective. And they're for their little sister, they have to make sure everything is good. They still are. I mean, when I go to India, I still face the same thing with my cousins. But I mean, what you were saying, and it also brought me back a memory uh, that the quota system, and we in the previous previous panel in another session, we were talking about, and I think Michael was there, and we were talking about the diversity and sometimes whether people get selected because of their diversity, because they're from a diverse culture. So once upon a time, I got a grant from National Science Foundation, and I was the PI. So even the people whom I knew very close, they're all men. And they said, oh, you got it. You know, we didn't get it. You know why? Because you're a woman. And that's why you got it. I got it because my projects was best, and I got it because of, I mean, the writing and everything. Oh no, they didn't say that. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, that's a case that we all face, and it could be vice versa. And some of the things we can talk over and over again. But I want to have a question. I want to ask Reem a question. Reem, you were talking about the research, especially experimental research for and as a, not just as a man, but also as just as a woman, but also as a researcher who had like Tagwa, who had experiments to be done. And how did you do? Did you shift like what Tagwa said? Did your institution, Abu Dhabi University, make any changes?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that Taqwa had just mentioned is I tried going through those. So that is the part that we tried to shift. The thing is that not that the university didn't do anything about it or did something about it, is that we are very strict here in the UAE with all the regulations. So there is a quota of people that can enter to the university. You need a week ahead of time to be able to go to put your name on the list, because they want to go and make sure that's from the regulations and laws of the country. So you need to make sure that you are within a certain quota, within the certain category. So a week ahead of time, you put your name in, and then you can go, and you have to have a negative COVID test that is less than 14 days old. So all of that made it harder for us to go there. Even the university is trying its best to encourage whatever it can do, but within the same regulations and laws that are allowed. So they're extending to the limits. So sometimes we end up, but what are other things that I also worked on other than trying to figure out the older research that was, the experiments were done and it wasn't published yet. And so I worked on those. Several of like my research is mixed. Part of it is on numerical, so the numerical part is still running and I'm still working on that. But within the experimental part, something that I thought of is, okay, I was able to get a grant now from the university, an internal grant, and I had my other internal grant that was running. So what I was working with that, okay, I was planning my experiment. So being able to order the pieces, because I'm assembling a certain setup, I began ordering the pieces ahead of time. So it usually takes a bit of time, and now it's taking a little bit longer. So I began receiving now the equipments. I was able to work with the manufacturers to do the training on these equipments. So these are stuff that do not require a lot of students coming in. And if it's scheduled properly with the university, I was able to do that. So I have the equipments, some of the equipments were ordered, came in, and we were able to I was able to do the training. So that part I got out of my way. So now when everything is back to normal and we're allowed to get, because a lot of the experimental work is done by students, grad and undergrad, and they're not allowing the undergrad to go on campus. Now only for the labs only. But later on, when the industry allows, it will be ready and running for that. Plus all of the other stuff that the rest of the colleagues mentioned on the research.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, I really like shifting towards another direction and working with the situation, but I can only imagine how hard it has been going through like COVID test and many other things, to make sure that we can still do the work. And I'm feeling privileged because I was complaining a lot. I will never complain again that I'm stuck at home since 13th March. This week it's going to be 1 full year I'm stuck at home. But the truth is that I didn't have to face online teaching. Yes, I did do online meetings like all of you. I didn't have to face, the students, teaching them. And as you all know that the students, you have to have an eye connection, so that doesn't happen. I didn't have to face that. I didn't have to face experimental learning because all my work can be done. In fact, I can work from home forever, honestly speaking. The thing I missed is in-person contact. There is a social aspect of our work, and that I miss terribly. But other than that, my productivity had increased. But when I hear from all of you what you had gone through, and especially, for women who had to go back home after work, doing something in the front as a frontliner, and then go back and take care of the home, the children, the house, and everything, how difficult it has been. In that respect, I think I'm going back to Alaa again. Alaa, you are with IFES and as a president now, and you have been in academia for a long time, have been with many professional organizations, as well as you just mentioned you got a chance to talk to your daughters. In fact, during teenage daughters, you could inspire them to be in the STEM fields. And so seeing this, how do you think that the society should respond to such situations when women have to bear a lot more than men, yet they don't get recognized all the time for all the hard work they did? My mother never got recognized. I tell you, she was a housewife, or a homemaker, whatever way you call, but she just worked and worked. She hasn't had a master's, but gave up her career to take care of us because my father was busy. So uh, tell me what do you think? What should we change? The policies, the mindset, um, the rules, regulations? What should we change?
I think all of the above. I think,
Okay.
but I think the main responsibility comes from the community itself. And nowadays, with everyone is connected to everyone. Okay, so
Yeah.
within a fraction of a minute, you could search information. You could see the latest that's happening in Japan or South Africa or Canada. So we're seeing a lot of connectivity, and we're seeing a lot of exchange of ideas, and a lot of these old stereotypes are breaking, which is good. But I think it should come from the community itself.
Mm-hmm.
In the MENA region here, I think one of the things is that is persistent is the fact that what you mentioned is that the responsibility of the woman is at home. When it comes to priorities, education of boys is more important than education of girls. When it comes to career, it's the same issue. We're seeing some of this change, but we're seeing some of this also persist. And as much as companies can change their policies and so on, that's certainly welcome. And with multinational companies doing a lot of business in the region here, we're seeing a lot of this happen. But I think it should come from the community itself. So, in many cases, we need to educate. We need to educate the youth about gender bias, about certain hidden, or unintentional gender bias. Some of the items that some of you mentioned regarding, oh, this is, you're a woman, you're too soft to handle this. Okay, let us handle it for you. I mean, this could be viewed as a compliment, but in the long term, I don't think that's productive. And these are the things that we should focus on. I give another example that I witnessed myself with in the corporate world. You know, when it comes to benefits, for example, housing benefits, healthcare benefits, and so on,
Yeah.
it is assumed that at least in the region here, that it is the male's responsibility. The male is the head of the household. So when a woman applies for a job, you know, she will go through a lot of scrutiny regarding whether the husband already has a job, and whether the husband already has health insurance, whether the husband has housing benefits. But the opposite doesn't happen. So when a male applicant applies for a job, they don't ask them the same question. So these are kind of, you know, these are entrenched in the society. They're entrenched in the business culture. They are entrenched in the community itself. And these are the things that need to change. The only way to change it is to start with the youth and to educate them. And I think we have a great opportunity to do this with the proliferation of technology, and maybe just everybody getting used to learning virtually and this and that. Maybe this will help us overcome some of this.
Thank you so much, Alaa. So I have saved the best question and the last, but the best, for Michael. And this is from United Nations point of view. If you see, do you think that because of this pandemic, the women who are in STEM, their career growth will be halted? And if so, is there anything any of the United Nations agency or any organization will be able to do something? And as general public, can we do something?
Thank you, Alaa. I think from I will take it from my personal point of view. There's a lot of awareness going on in terms of this issue, and just like the observation that I have seen in this particular session, in the Middle East and North Africa, I've seen that you, Tagwa, Reem, Aseel and Masoumeh, you're all inspiring, and you're seeing the positive side of the pandemic. And I think this is something that is really the heart of the matter, because we've seen it in as we roll out projects. We've seen a similar mentality, and I'm seeing it right after my eyes while you're describing all the challenges that you're facing and rising in spite of that situation. I'm very optimistic that it's not only the UN as a whole is moving in this direction, but I will see that it gets stronger in terms of the opportunities, because women are also trying to get a fair piece of the action. Now, future development, as I would see it personally, would depend heavily on science and research that you're working on, like Tagwa, Reem, and all of you. And the role of STEM in the development world is really, it cannot be underestimated. I would say that. And of course, all of you, the EFIS, the GEDC, your role remains extremely relevant in this area. So getting women, inspiring them to be part of STEM is the work that we need to accelerate. And we have to put everything, all the tools that we have, including the Rising to the Top publication, in highlighting you, not only the ones that are in this current panel, but as I see, we were saying, starting with Asia and the Pacific, the Americas, Latin America, Europe, different situations, different challenges, but everyone trying to make the most out of it. And I'm very inspired with it. So we have to go in this direction, I would say, and this is what I would like to contribute, because I've seen a lot of challenges in this particular session, Middle East and North Africa, but I've also seen a lot of inspiration in turning the tide into making it more positive. Back to you all, Soma.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. That's true. I mean, I saw a lot of positive side in here. I mean, this is just remarkable. When one side is so difficult, people are still thinking of the positive side and the good side of it, and then thinking about how can we see good things coming within a short period of time. And that really is extremely important for all of us. Let me just check if there is any question for anyone. There is someone has written facing challenges, finding resilience. That's very nice. And I think this is for Tagwa. I'll just say we have 2-3 minutes, but for Tagwa Musa, how has learning how to say no helped strengthen your voice and the role you play in the world as a professional, a mother, and a wife? What advice can you give other young women professionals who try to balance personal life with professional? This is for Tagwa Musa.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for this question. As I said, really, it is not easy to say no, because to be a mother, it is a little bit difficult to tell your child, no, I cannot do this. But it is just kind of time management also. We can do it, but not at every time just you choose. I can do this, but not now. So I have to find sometimes for kitchen, sometimes for my work, for laptop. If I'm in a meeting, that means you should go. You cannot ask me to go to the kitchen to cook something for you. Just wait. So I think just is the time management, as Aseel said, is really if you manage your time, it will be okay. And you know, it is not very difficult to change people. When you try, you can succeed at the end. But it is not easy really at the beginning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was a question, and there is another. It's I don't know if this is a question or a comment. Where is the line between protecting a woman and limiting her resilience by stepping in before she can try something and saying this is a man's job? That's very true. Aseel, as the last person to talk today, would you like to make some comments before we end?
Yeah, actually, regarding that comment, I had this conversation with a friend about this, that we need to rethink that each time we feel we need to protect women, we need to step up and do this for them, we are putting down a chance for her to build her capacity. For example, I remember when I was just a freshman at my first year, my mother and father encouraged me to try go via the public transportation.
Yeah.
Many girls, they don't try public transportation because their brother or their father or their husband won't allow them, because they get mixed with many men and it's required working for some different. But I think that moment when my mom and dad encouraged me to try one of the public transportation, that has been a changing moment, because of now that this has been a changing experience for me. Now I have to know, I know how to deal with many different people.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about roads. I know how to travel through Baghdad, all of this. So imagine that there are many moments that go on within 24 hours when we miss this chance as a woman, because our brother or our father or our friends is stepping up and saying, no, I'll do this for you. I can go drive you to the work, or I can do this for you, or I can go and buy the vegetables and all of things for the house for you. All of this is keeping me from building my capacity, which is important because in a year or two, I'll be responsible of raising my own children. This is the great thing about women. Women have the greater part in raising up children, so they need to be well educated. Education is not only in school and university. Education is life, is experience many things in life. Sorry, I think I talked a lot.
So profound. Thank you so much. And I want to take this opportunity to thank each of our panelists, starting from Tagwa, Reem, Masoumeh, Aseel, and of course, Alaa. Thank you so much. And Michael being here on from the UNITAR side. And really, this has been the greatest session um, since morning I'm doing, but I loved it. And I hope to see you all again in some other session. Thank you so much. Thank you. And don't leave, by the way, before I forget, otherwise Aliki will say, oh, you forget to tell. The thing is that we can use the same link to reconnect, okay? So next session is Africa, southern part of Africa, or most of the Africa. And after that, there is a closing ceremony. So please don't go away. It's now 5:32, so 6 o'clock we are going to start again. And it is GMT. So now you have to calculate London time. And see you again. Thank you very much. The next session starts at 6 p.m. GMT, and that means it is 1 p.m. Eastern. And okay, now I have problem. 10 a.m. in Pacific. Okay, bye.